So I got a 2011 Chrysler Town Country, and I had an issue. This is my friend's van, and had an issue. His daughter was driving it down the street, and it died, and just shut off. Wouldn't do nothing. She tried to start it. You could hear relays and stuff clicking, but the starter wouldn't do anything. Everything on the dashboard would light up, but it wouldn't do anything. So got it over here to my house, and we hooked up the scanner. Scanner wouldn't communicate with it. So got to doing some digging, looking around, and found a wire on here that went from the fuel pump fuse, which is that yellow one right there, and it jumped over. I can't remember exactly which fuse it was hooked to, but it hooked over here, and did some research on it and found out that that was a bypass for Chrysler's poor design of their TIPM module, where they soldered the fuel pump relay in to the board that is non-serviceable. You can't change that relay. The only way you can fix that, if that happens, is to buy that jumper and jump your power across. So we had that issue, and so I didn't like the way that was set up. Shame on Chrysler. They know they have this problem. They should fix it. So what I did is ordered a reman TIPM module. This one's been rebuilt. This is the new one that you can see in the picture. Ordered it, took care of the fuel pump problem. Now you don't have to have the jumper wire. It's actually running off of the relay inside the TIPM. So got that all together. Did some research, which Chrysler's wiring diagrams are like a plate of spaghetti. I'm used to Ford and GM's, and they make sense the way they have their wiring diagrams. That's another thing, shame on Chrysler. The way they design their stuff poorly. So got this TIPM module in the mail, put it in, and it ran for about 10 seconds, died. So started doing some digging and found that it was blowing this M28, this 10 amp fuse, which is the PCM transmission fuse. It was blowing that. So did some research on it. Really didn't find much out there in the way of help of what it was. But it did find out that some of the main problems they have was this TIPM module, the PCM they've had issues with. They've had issues with the fuel pump pulling too much amperage and popping fuses other than the fuel pump fuse. So I went back and unhooked the fuel pump harness back at the tank and powered up the fuel pump off of a separate battery with the help of my wife. She was in the vehicle. I had her crank it up, and I ran the fuel pump off of its own circuit. Just if that was the problem that was blowing the fuse, I would know. So it still blew the fuse even with the fuel pump on its own system. So we ended up hooking that back up, realized that wasn't the problem. So I went through, I don't know how many sensors, unplugging them that are outputs from the PCM. I unplugged them one at a time to see if the fuse would quit popping. Went through schematics, and another shame on Chrysler. for the way they design their stuff poorly. I mean, it's trying to find a needle in a haystack. So did a whole bunch of searching, and at the beginning I thought maybe I should check the alternator, and I'd forgot about it and was frustrated trying to figure out why it kept, what was blowing the PCM fuse. Went through, I don't know how many outputs, sensors, out of the PCM, checked all my power and grounds to the PCM, checked all the wiring going out of the PCM and into it, couldn't find anything that short to ground, so ended up deciding, you know, I forgot about the alternator to check it, so I decided, you know, at this point I found a place that you give them your VIN from the van, and they program a computer, send it to you, and it's supposed to be plug and play. So waited, ended up ordering, this is after I ordered the TIPA module, replaced it, took care of the fuel pump problem, but still was blowing the PCM fuse. And it only run like 10 seconds and then die. Had to put another fuse in, run 10 seconds, die. So I ordered the computer, put the computer in, which wasn't hard. Okay, now I got the new computer in, and the inside here, when I would turn the, I gotta get the key and put it in. When I'd turn it on, it would show it was in reverse. Instead of, like right now, it shows it's in park. With the new computer I put in, it showed it was in reverse, and my backup camera would be on, and I couldn't get it out of park, and it wouldn't start. So ended up putting the old computer back in, and trying it again, and when I put the old computer back in, I was back in park like I am now, which I have the old computer in right now. So I'm back in park. I could come over here, I could take it in and out of gear. Backup camera didn't come on until I put it in reverse, so it's on right now. So ended up deciding that the computer that I had reprogrammed and sent to me had not been programmed right, so took it back out, put the old one back in, took some days off to clear my mind, come back out, and it hit me that I hadn't done anything with the alternator. Well, that's another item that's higher amperage. Maybe I should try it. So I come out here earlier this week, and I unplugged, not the battery wire, but I unplugged the connector, which is your sense and your field wires. I unplugged that connector off the alternator and put a new fuse in, that M28 fuse, which is the PCM fuse right here. I put that fuse back in, a new one, and started up, ran, didn't die. I ran it for 15 minutes with the alternator unplugged, never died. So ended up finding out that after all this, that the alternator had a short in it. And if this had been a Ford or GM, they have their own circuit, their own fuse for the alternator, that if the alternator had a short in it, and I know this for a fact because I've worked on both of them, that if there's a problem, if there was a short, this problem I had on this van, if there was a short in that alternator, it would have popped the alternator fuse, not a stupid PCM fuse. Shame on Chrysler. Poor design. So the schematic I have here is a schematic of how they have the power wired to the alternator and starter. So as you can see, this is the battery right here. This goes down, that's your starter. So they're supplying power to the starter right there on that wire. This is the TPM module. So this fuse that you're seeing right there is that fuse right there, and that's that module. So I checked all this wiring harness. I took all this out right here. I took the battery tray, the TPM module, and I checked the harness and the splice connection, because someone said that might be the problem. There might be a short there. And so I checked it. Nope, didn't find any chafed wires, nothing broken. So put that all back together. I found this schematic after I had found out the alternator, after I'd unplugged the alternator and it ran for 15 minutes without blowing that PCM fuse. I pulled this schematic up and I got to looking at it, and there's the fuse I was blowing, the M28, and it says it's a 10 amp. So this is your power. If you look here, this is your power to your powertrain, or your PCM. So you have, why they send power to two different connectors in the same connector is beyond me. I don't know why they do that. Maybe someone can enlighten me. But maybe it's just because it's Chrysler and they like to do stuff like that to confuse people. But so it comes in the powertrain control module. So right here is your sense wire and your field control, and they're controlled by the PCM. They come off of the PCM. So the only way the alternator is fused is through the PCM. Stupid design. Shame on you, Chrysler. You should know better. So the reason I'm making this video is so if someone else has this problem, they don't go through all the stuff I went through trying to figure out. I mean, I've been working on this thing for a month. And I should have, back when I thought about the alternator, I should have pulled it and I would have had less time in it. But it's ridiculous. Like I said, Chrysler's wiring and their schematics is like spaghetti. And I'm sorry if you're Chrysler fans out there, but you shouldn't be. Chryslers are poorly designed. And in my opinion, they're pieces of junk. And just for an example, I have a 2004 Ford Taurus alternator schematic pulled up here, which I own that car, and great car. If you look at their schematic, you'll see you have the battery, and then you have your circuits going. So this is your alternator right here. Okay, so you have a fuse here, and I think that's a fusible link, if I'm not mistaken. That's your power wire, positive wire, it goes to your alternator is what that is. And I believe that's a fusible link on that, which if you look over here on Chrysler, they're just gonna let it burn down because I don't see a fusible link anywhere. So if anything happens, that wire, it's gonna short and possibly cause a fire. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like no fusible link, no fusible link. So you come over here to Ford schematic on, I believe, I'm not sure if this is a sense wire or, I'm not sure, but it has a fuse. There's a 10 amp fuse that goes straight to the alternator, does not go through the computer like on a Chrysler. So if something happens to this alternator on this Ford Taurus, I'm going to know that the alternator has a problem because it has its own fuse. It doesn't go through the computer. Now, you do have, the computer is, which your powertrain control modules right there, it is connected to the alternator, but it's sensing, it monitors it, and it controls your light on your dash to tell you, yeah, you're charging, you're not charging, as you can see in this section right here. So this is the way it should have been designed with Chrysler, but no, we're going to run it through a fuse that makes absolutely no sense and confuse everybody. Stupid. So I'm sorry about the ranting, but I will never own a Chrysler product, Dodge product, any of that. I'm Ford biased. I have worked at GM, worked on them, and yes, they have their problems, but this is stupid. And I even called the dealer and told him what was going on and was considering taking it to them, and they told me they had never seen this issue before, which is, I find that hard to believe because I see this issue out on the internet all the time on different forums because I researched it. It's all over the place out there. I think Chrysler is just trying to get you to get in so they can throw parts at it. They probably know what it is, but I was told just to replace this TIPM module and the PCM, and maybe a few items here and there. That probably would have been $3 to $4 grand. And between this TIPM module, which is not hard to change, it's easy. It was $350. I changed it, and this isn't new. It's rebuilt by a reputable company. I changed that. I got the computer, but the computer wasn't the problem, and obviously it wasn't programmed right. So we're going to send it back and try and get a refund on it because it wasn't done right. But even if I have to eat that, between I put an alternator, a new belt, a tensioner, I put that TIPM module, say I have to eat the computer, I've got $1,100 in this, in parts. This would have probably been somewhere around $4 grand. Just to do an alternator probably would have been $1,000 at a dealer. I'm just getting sick of it. You can't trust dealers anymore. They just want to throw parts at stuff and run your bill up. And whatever happened to being truthful and helping people? Sorry, ranting. We really don't have any good Chrysler dealers out here that we can trust anymore. I got a friend that has his own shop and has problems with Chrysler, and he finally threw his hands up, said I'm done, and refuses to work on Chryslers. I tried to get him to work on this several times, and he told me he didn't want to, so we were joking about it. But so plate of spaghetti is what this is. Shame on Chrysler. You guys ought to be held accountable. You ought to be recalling these. And it's not just the 2011 that has this problem. I mean, it goes back, I don't know, there's like 2008 to clear up to the newest ones have this problem. So if your van dies while you're driving it, it blows that PCM fuse. It's M28. Check your alternator. And it's easy. All you got to do is go down there, which the alternator, you can't see it, but it's just below this radiator hose. You can get to it from underneath. You get under there, unplug the 2-pin connector off the alternator, check that fuse. If that fuse is blown, replace it, and then try starting it. And if it starts and it runs, replace your alternator. Don't go through everything I went through. And this crazy thing with the fuel pump, that jumper wire and all that, just replace your TIPM module. It's $350 for a rebuilt one. And I can't remember, I probably have the paper